introduction. And in that moment, I would like to ask you your collaboration and your participation. So please get your phone ready or your internet browser and join this website here, because I would like you to ask some questions. Just get ready for that. Nut, help me out here. Be like the policeman. And yeah, and last week this news came out. So to be honest, I normally don't read this magazine, but my girlfriend sent me this news because she knew that I was presenting in this session. So as we see here, and as we saw this morning also, the AI is coming more often in everywhere, but also in our field. But what I'm talking today is this transition towards 4.0 industry. So during the last centuries, we've been having these transitions, like the first revolution based on steam power, the second one, 100 years later, based on electricity and mass production, 100 years later, again, a new revolution with automation and electronics, and the last one, which is happening today, is based on Internet of Things, AI, and it's only 50 years after the last one, so it's like the change is relatively shorter. And this is affecting, of course, our field, in which here we have only the example of pharma, but if we see like the level of digitalization, pharma is one of the lowest in the range in terms of digitalization. And that's why, because there was no economic pressure, you know, the pharma companies had big margins, huge margins, so they could basically dismiss any wrong batch, right? So basically trash it, because the margins were big enough that there was not such a big deal. But now that the patents are expiring and we have like low cost value products, so such like all these alternative food proteins, we need to decrease the price, right? So we need to decrease the cost, and to do so, we need to implement all these new tools of the 4.0 revolution. So to be able to apply this 4.0 revolution and became a 4.0 bioindustry, we need to use all these tools. It's not only AI or Internet of Things, we also need to work a lot on data analytics, on automatization, and complement everything in order to finally be able to implement digital twins, as Klaus just mentioned. It will be a very important point, especially for our bioprocesses, which is what I'm focused on. And due to that reason, in our group, in the last years, we've been participating in several projects, like trying to promote these transitions towards this new revolution. So basically, what I want to show you here is like the CPV is the continuous process verification. It's a revolution that we are doing also now in the kind of the quality of our processes. So before, until this continued process verification, we were basically assessing the quality in the quality control, right? And then if our batch pass the quality control, then we can obtain revenue for that. If we cannot accept the quality control, then we trash it. So that could be like a big loss of the revenue, because all the product that we obtain in these batches will have to be dismissed. So what we want to do now, and what we were working on with this consortium, was the implementation of this continued process verification, right? So then what we are doing is do the process verification all the time. And what we would like basically is to include the unknown factors that can affect our bioprocess. And we would like to check every single step of the bioprocess, so we can include this. And then basically, if we are able to include all these unknown factors and build a proper digital model based on the bioprocess understanding, ideally, we should be able to feedback the perfect action to the bioprocess, and if possible, that action should be automated. So we should avoid this point of the operator to take decisions or to implement the decision. That's the ideal for the future. So we should avoid this operator decision and operation actuation. So now what I'm going to explain in this session is going to be like the implementation of this technology or this vision in a bioprocess using Pichia Pastoris, as Klaus just mentioned. It's exactly the same example. So in this audience, I don't think I have to introduce Pichia, but still I would like to do like a very short summary of the gap promoter. So the gap promoter is the standard methanol-free expression system. It's a key step in the glycolysis using glucose or glycerol. So it was considered a strong constitutive growth coupled expression system. I don't know if it's strong is the right word anymore. Still we got like good levels of expression, but depending on what you're comparing for. And what is very nice is that we can see like a very nice correlation between the transcription levels and the secreted product, right? If you are working with secreted product, because it's like a growth coupled expression system. So the faster you grow, the higher expression that you have on your glycolytic genes, and that makes a very nice slope like this. And also, as Pau started to explain yesterday, we have like this project working, or this kind of strategy like that we've been developing already for 15 years. In the early years, it was together with our friends from Boku, and we were implementing this glycolysis and these epoxy conditions in which we were kind of making this switch in the metabolism towards the fermentative metabolism. And what we were doing from the early days is trying to quantify these metabolic fluxes and also the transcriptomic fluxes. So back in the day, I was working with this technology during my PhD, and then also other students have been following up with the implementation of new ideas towards implementing this cultivation strategy in fed batch cultures. So these, for example, are the results obtained by Arnau Gasset in a PhD student in our group. And basically, what we are showing here, well, a color is missing here, but it should be aligned here, right? So this is like a continuous cultivation results, and we are feeding different oxygen inlets, right? So we are reducing the amount of oxygen that is being supplied to the fermenter, and up to this point, right, the concentration of oxygen in the media is 0. So the dissolved oxygen that we see in our sensor is 0. But it doesn't mean that we cannot go below the oxygen supply. It's simply that we cannot see it with the oxygen sensor. So what we find out is that if we follow the RQ, we can kind of quantify the level of oxygen limitation that we are submitting our process, right? So we thought that this parameter could be like a good transferable parameters to not only implement epoxy conditions in continuous cultivation, but also to fed batch cultivation. And this was one of the first challenges that was already presented actually in the last Pichia conference. But here we are doing the next steps. So in addition to all the standards parameters that we are controlling and monitoring in our system, we want to include now the respiratory quotient that is based on the results that we get from our gas analyzer. So based on oxygen determination and CO2 determination. And the target was to implement RQ of 1.4 in real time. So basically, just a brief introduction of the respiratory parameters. We like it very much because we consider them like online metabolism reporters that give us a lot of information in real time, and also is a scalable parameter. So basically what we are doing is a balance between the inlet and the outlet, and by that, based on the results of the oxygen and the CO2, we can calculate our key soft sensors, the CER and the OR, oxygen uptake rate and carbon emission rate, and that are nicely coupled to the biomass, right? And when we do the quotient between both, then we obtain the RQ. So in our epoxy conditions, basically what we are doing is reducing the OR, right? And when we are reducing the OR, we are increasing by that the RQ. So in normoxic conditions, we should have values of RQ around 1, but when we are limiting the oxygen transfer rate, the oxygen uptake rate, then our RQ should be in the range of 1.4, 1.6. And this is the idea, to implement this constant value of RQ in dynamic processes. So not in continuous anymore, but also in fed batch. And since there is no accumulation in the culture broth, all the oxygen that we are transferring is consumed, right? So to control the RQ, we need to control the oxygen transfer rate. And how we do this? Main impact affecting the oxygen transfer rate is the agitation. Why? Because the agitation makes the bubbles bigger or smaller, and this is affecting, very importantly, the area of transfer, which is key for the oxygen transfer rate. So Arnau, actually 2 years ago, presented the first results in which we were able to kind of keep constant this value along the whole fed batch time, so 20 hours of Arnau taking care of the fermenter, of course not sleeping, changing the RPMs every hour or every half an hour, right? So that was very tough. So the next step here was done by Albert Sales, right, in which he was implementing a very simple algorithm control in which we automized this increase of agitation rate to keep our RQ constant. And as you can see here, with a very simple algorithm, like do-it-yourself algorithm made by our group, that we are not experts in coding at all, we were able to obtain these very nice results. And here we have like an example, like growing our cultures at 3 different growth rates, and we can see how the algorithm is self-controlling, right, at obtaining the best agitation rates that allow us to reach the perfect RQ. And in the context of our collaboration with ISON, we wanted to test the implementation of all these new tools in our Pichia bioprocesses. And it came exactly at the point in which we were starting to implement all these systems, and we thought that the RQ could be a good example to implement this EI-based control. Not because it's essential, right? Because as we saw before, like with our kind of do-it-yourself control code by ourselves, we could already achieve like a very nice control in a very narrow band. But still, we thought that was like complex and interesting enough to implement these EI-based tools. So basically, what we did with the help of the ISON people is like we were monitoring all the parameters from the fermenter. So we are using, in this case, a Sartorius fermenter. And then what we were doing here is like we had like a Inforce software on top. So first of all, for the people that is familiar with bioprocess and know about this software, this was a mess, right? So it was quite complicated to have like an external software controlling our Sartorius fermenter and receiving all the data in real time. And on top of this, we were using a data feeder in order to be able to upload in real time these 17 parameters to the ISON platform in the cloud, right? And in the ISON cloud, all these 7 parameters were recorded every 5 seconds, if I'm not wrong. And here we developed our EA-based control algorithm to control the RQ in the desired parameters, right? And after this loop of the algorithm based on EI, we were returning in real time as well the optimal steering rate to achieve the desired RQ. So we were doing all this like path every minute basically, right? With not only all the data that is essential for the RQ control, but also any kind of data. So all the parameters that we were monitoring. So this will allow us to do in the future further control loops or further applications with this technology. So I'm not going to go in detail of how the EI model is constructed because it's far away from my field. But as I mentioned before, like we were collecting all the data, we were comparing basically the RQ that we were measuring in real time. We were comparing this with the error, with the set point, and then by that calculating the error. And basically, what we were doing is that our proportional constant, for the people that is like familiar with the PID controls, you will know about the proportional constant, was variable, right? And it was adaptative, and this adaptative proportional gain was determined by the EI model. So by that, we were able to implement this control algorithm in real time based on this EA-based control on the cloud, right? And by that, we were achieving even a more accurate RQ values. We were implementing a deviation here. So basically, what we did here is changing the inlet composition of air. So from only oxygen to only air to like an air supply with oxygen, with pure oxygen. So by that, the agitation went down, but then the algorithm itself was able to recover again in a few minutes the desired RQ value, right? So not only with the standard conditions, but it was able to respond rapidly to this deviation. By that, we had like a very precise and accurate control, and also what was the most interesting for us is that we were able to show a case in which we were using all these tools for our Pichia application. So just as a take-home message, in the industry, not only in the Pichia field, but in all the biomanufacturing space, we need to promote this transition towards the 4.0 industry, applying all these new tools. In our case, we choose this RQ control as example of something that is not obvious, but it was not too complex as a first example, but we are working on further applications, right? So for example, like anomaly detection and so on. And by that, we could achieve our accurate results that basically allow us to obtain increases of twofold in the production rates and yields. And for us, it's a very interesting case of a successful application of EI, but we will have many more in the coming future. These are the two papers that are already published with the data that I present here, but the main paper, which is focused on the implementation of the EI model, is about to be submitted in the following weeks. And yes, just as a end of the presentation, acknowledgements to all the PhD students that participated in the work. My mentors at UAB, Jose Luis Montesinos and Paco Valero, our funding, and then ISON for developing the EI control algorithm, and BlueSense that was really important for all the gas analysis. They support us very much for a long time, and also Inforce for their support with the software. So thanks for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for the great talk. Very basic question. How did you know what the optimal RQ was for your productivity?
We were doing the whole characterization, right? So in continuous cultivation, you could have like a very accurate and very reliable data, and we were basically scanning all the RQ, and what we found is that there is not a very specific optimal point, but a range. So 1.4 was like a kind of like a range in which because if you are limiting too much, you are producing a lot of ethanol as well, so you need to be careful in that sense. is there just like a sweet point, right? A sweet spot that we see the increase in the production without getting in a very risky area.